All right, guys. Well, it looks like we've got a really nice crowd here for the Hawkins County update. So thanks everybody for hopping on. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off and make sure that we stay within our time limits for this presentation. There may be a few more people that hop in before we get into the meat of the presentation, but certainly appreciate everybody for hopping on. Today's meeting really serves three purposes. It's going to have three parts. We're going to really start off by just doing a Tennessee Achieves overview. There's one thing that we've learned really since March 2020 is that there's a lot of people in the state that have heard of Tennessee Achieves but don't really realize what Tennessee Achieves does. It's easy to think of us as just a scholarship or just as a mentor program, and we want everyone to be aware of all of the different programs that we offer. So we're going to do a little bit of an overview of that, and then we will dig into the Hawkins County data. Not a ton, not going to get way into the weeds here, but just give you a little bit of an update in terms of how the students in your community are doing. And then we'll wrap it up with a call to action, talking about some of the things that you guys as involved community members can be doing to not only advance the mission of Tennessee Achieves, but also really just overall impact the post-secondary options for students in the county. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dig in. My name is Ben Sterling. I serve as the Senior Director of Content at Tennessee Achieves. And I feel like I recognize several of the names on here. So good to see some of you on here and some others that I've never met before. So nice to meet you on here virtually. I've been with Tennessee Achieves since June 2014. So I'm in my 7th year working with Tennessee Achieves, but I was also a student in the program when it launched back with the class of 2009. So I've been involved ever since it started. So I've seen it really from all the different perspectives that you can see it from. So I always enjoy talking to people about the work that we do. So the slide that you can see on your screen, you're going to see the state of Tennessee and almost all the counties filled in. So today, Tennessee Achieves serves nearly every student, every county in the state of Tennessee. We work in 90 counties today, but we haven't always been this big. We launched way back, like I said, the class of 2009, just in Knox County. We were called Knox Achieves then, where we operated for 3 years before we expanded to 14 counties with the class of 2012. And really, ever since then, we've been growing every year. We moved into Hawkins County when we launched with Tennessee Promise back in class of 2015. So we've been operating there. We'll be moving into our 7th cohort of students with the class of 2022. Currently, and overall, since the class of 2009, we've worked with 440,000 students, and we've recruited over 71,000 volunteer mentors. So let's talk. Sorry, that slide's out of order for me. I've been moving them around. Let's talk a little bit about our reach. So I said that we've worked with over 440,000 students. Those students are coming from 90 counties. Of those 90 counties, 74 of those are considered rural counties. I'd argue Hawkins County is one of those. And then there's 35 counties that have been designated at risk or distressed by the Department of Economic and Community Development. I think our work is as important in those counties as it is anywhere in the state. And in those 90 counties that we're serving, we work with over 600 high schools, public, private, charter, and homeschool. So pretty much every school possible in the state of Tennessee at some point or another is working with Tennessee Achieves throughout the year. We're working with currently 67 post-secondary institutions. If you look at the ratio in terms of where our students are enrolling with Tennessee Promise, it comes as no surprise that most are going to a community college. They tend to have the most variety in terms of options, and it really is an appealing option for students that plan to transfer to a 4-year institution on down the road. So nearly 80% of our students are enrolling there. I like to point out this 11% that enroll at a TCAT. If you're unfamiliar with TCAT, it's the Tennessee College of Applied Technology, where students go to earn technical certificates and training. 11% is significant because when we launched Tennessee Promise with the class of 2015, it was 8%. So that number's continued to increase. And I'd say a lot of TCATs have probably seen that over the years. As we continue to sort of zoom out and look at the overall work of Tennessee Achieves, we work with 60,000 students annually. That equates to about 89% of Tennessee's high school seniors. And I think as a staff, 89% of seniors it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around how many students that really is. Nearly every student in the state is going through our program and is receiving at least one email from us, which is kind of crazy. And I think even more impressive is that 78% of all first-time freshmen at Tennessee community colleges are one of our students, or Tennessee Achieve students. And even bigger, the fact that 86% of all Tennessee community college graduates are Tennessee Achieve students. So when you see that graduation ceremony, students walking across the stage, 86% of those are our students. So we're really reaching many students in the state, nearly all of them. This gray line on this screen, these are just some general demographics. This is not unique to Hawkins County. These are statewide view in terms of demographics. 56% of our students are falling into what we would consider eligible for federal financial aid. This is determined by the FAFSA and their parents' income. So if a student falls below a certain income threshold, they're eligible for federal financial aid. And over half of our students fall into that group, which is great. That means they're receiving additional supplemental support outside of just Tennessee Promise Scholarship. In the middle of this slide, you'll see 40% claim to be first-generation college students. We've been working on a document that's a national document in terms of first-generation college students, and I've been reading some of that, and it's actually really surprising how many people can't define first-generation college student, or they can, but it's just different from the way that I would describe it or the way that someone else might define it. The way that I see first-generation college student is a student who is the first person in their direct family to go to college. When I say that, I mean their parents and their siblings, not outside of that. If you are going to college and no one else in your house essentially has gone to college, you are a first-generation college student. That's me. My dad went for a year, didn't graduate. I'm a first-generation college student because he didn't graduate. And I think a lot of students think like if an aunt went to college or a cousin went to college, that they're not a first-generation college student, but in my eyes, they are. So I think this number is probably higher, actually. But still, I think it's a badge of honor. I say that's the way I see it. So I encourage people to really tout that when they are. And then the last demographic data point here, I think is actually really interesting. We were working with the National Science Board a couple of weeks ago, and they asked us to dig into our students and see what their majors were. And it was really eye-opening to me to see that over half of our students are studying a STEM field. We put health science and STEM, but if you work in STEM, you know health science is included in that. So over half of our students are studying some form of STEM discipline, and that includes all of our students that are at a TCAT studying a technical program. So that to me says that our students are pursuing in-demand careers. They're studying programs that are more than likely going to result in them finding a really high-paying, quality job and career in their community. I mean, I travel all across the state of Tennessee, or at least I used to, and I know that in most communities, manufacturing and industry is growing, and that means that there are jobs for people that are qualified to fill those, and people that are in STEM careers, they're equipping themselves with the skills to fill those jobs as we move forward. And that I consider that one of the roles of tnAchieves to do just that. The bottom of this slide, you'll see how much Tennessee Promise costs and how much our budget is. The Tennessee Promise annual cost is $32 million. That comes out to be about $1,000 per award per student. And then the tnAchieves annual operating budget, $2.5 million. We privately fundraise these dollars, pays for things like my salary, our travel reimbursement, our facilities and technology and things along those lines. Let's talk about tnAchieves programming, the things that we actually are offering. As you're looking at this slide, you're going to see Tennessee Promise over here kind of by itself, and then we've got some programming in the middle. The reason I have Tennessee Promise by itself is because I think it's unique in its role that it plays in our work. So Tennessee Promise to me is like the backbone of tnAchieves. It's what brings students to us. It's what we would consider the carrot that is that's sort of the magic for tnAchieves. When a student or a family hears that they can attend college tuition and mandatory free, it perks their ears up. They're like, well, of course I'm going to apply for that. So that's the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. And one of the reasons why we are able to work with so many different students because it is such an attractive, popular option. But I think what students often will find is once they're in our program, it's these other programs that tend to be the most valuable. For one of those, the first one that they'll actually encounter is that volunteer mentor. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation. But essentially, every student that applies for Tennessee Promise and completes the FAFSA is paired with a volunteer mentor that coaches them through that college access piece, gets them from high school senior to college freshman as seamlessly as possible. Each student will submit 8 hours of community service. That's just a tenet of our program. It's been around since we launched in 2009. And really, I think it ends up being something that students value maybe after the fact. Once they've done the community service, they see it as sort of, they're annoyed by the fact that they have to do community service at first, and then they do it and they're like, oh, well, this is really awesome. And I think it really exposes students to the needs of their community in a way that they wouldn't otherwise see. And I think they're typically 96% told us that they were thankful for that when we surveyed them. Our summer programs, as you can see a little sun here, our summer programs are aimed at students who have scored below a 19 on their ACT. So students that have that score on their ACT typically have to take learning support classes their first semester of college. This can be intimidating. It can make the first semester more complicated. It can cause students to lack confidence. So we have the summer bridge programs really to help equip students with the skills that they need to start college in the fall. The Summer Bridge program is a 3-week program that's hosted at 17 different community college campuses across the state. And students come to that college and take math, reading, and English every day. And then at the end of the 3 weeks, they take an AccuPlacer assessment. And if they do well enough on that, they can test out of learning support classes and start college ready. The Summer Institute is like the Summer Bridge program on steroids. It's a 6-week program. It's credit bearing, so the students that finish the program successfully start college in the fall with 9 credit hours, and they also eliminate the need for learning support. It's a much larger commitment. It's a longer day. It's every day, and it's for 6 weeks. It was 10 weeks until the pandemic. We've shortened it to 6 weeks for that reason. But the Summer Institute had a 100% success rate this year, so 29 students in Memphis were able to start college 9 credit hours ahead, eliminating the need for remediation. So hugely successful program, something that we certainly want to try to expand across the state as we continue to find ways to do that. And then complete in the bottom right-hand corner here is our coaching model that we launched with the class of 2019. And it's really taken our mentor program, I think, and just beefing it up a little bit. It's hiring people on our staff who are paired with students from a lower income background. Based on our analysis of our data, students from a lower income background are statistically the most likely to drop out of college, to not persist fall to fall. So we're targeting those students with this intervention in terms of the coaching, the intentional coaching, in hopes of building an extra layer of accountability for those students. We're seeing a lot of success with that. I'll show you how it's impacting our fall to fall retention in just a few slides. But Complete has really been a model for us that we're going to continue to grow and expand on and innovate in that space. On the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see how we talk about being in a heavy communication organization. I would almost argue that's what we are. We're a communication organization that does scholarship work on the side. We send 16 million emails a year, 6 million text messages, all aimed at making sure that students and mentors and parents and other stakeholders in our work are aware of the things that we're doing, are aware of what's next, and are always on the same page as Tennessee Achieves. And we're incredibly targeted in that approach. I think it's one of the things that makes us special and has really driven our success over the years, is being able to identify a student, where they are in the process, and then target them with communication based on their specific need. And being able to do that has really, I think, resulted in the success that we found, particularly around the FAFSA and community service. We'll actually talk about next. So as we talk about program benchmark, let's dig into the data a little bit. FAFSA file rate. So the FAFSA, if you're not familiar with that, that's the free application for federal student aid. This is the application that all Tennessee college students complete for federal and state financial aid. It's an audacious document that students complete. It's challenging. If you work in this space at all, you know it can be confusing and intimidating to parents and students alike. But it's a necessary evil. It's something that we require for students because it gets them eligible for all of that financial aid in a lot of cases that can help pay for college for them. And so when we see a county that's exceeding the state average, that's a huge win. That means 89% of your seniors are taking an active step towards college. It can only mean good things for them. So 3% percentage points above the state average, huge win, especially during a pandemic year. This is from the class of 2021. So this is during that the year where everything was all crazy. Hawkins County found a way to exceed the state average. I think you should go find your school counselors and give them a pat on the back because this is really an impressive number. When you look at community service, again, students are required to submit 8 hours of community service every semester. Hawkins County students have completed almost 30,000 hours of community service. Statewide, our students have completed over 3 million hours of community service. It's always a time for me to plug that if you're involved in a community organization or someone you know is and they need volunteers, feel free to reach out to us. We can advertise that to Tennessee Promise students. They're always looking for things to do, especially locally. So if you have something that's this fall, let us know and we can definitely put it on our website, email it out to students, put it on social media, find ways to get it in front of students so you can get those volunteers. Talk a little bit more specifically about data. This is really a way to benchmark Hawkins County versus the state in a couple of different metrics. The first line here, Tennessee Promise applicants. This is from the class of 2021. The two rows in the middle, the enrolled number and the retention rate, that's the class of 2019. And the 3-year graduation rate is from the class of 2017. So you had 507 Tennessee Promise applicants from the 3 high schools in the county. You got 188 students that enrolled with Tennessee Promise, and of those, 73% retained in their first year. 6 percentage points ahead of the state average. I think this is incredible. And to me, it's the most impressive data point that I've talked about today. I've done 3 of these. And the reason why I think this is really impressive is because Hawkins County doesn't necessarily have a major campus in its county lines. There's not a college campus there. So that means that the students typically, other than TCAT, if the students are going to Walter State or Northeast, they're having to commute to a campus. And they're still going. So whatever it is that's in the water, the students are retaining at a high rate. I think that's really, really impressive, considering most of the time when you see a really high retention rate above the state average, it's because there's a campus right in their hometown, downtown. It's all in their backyard. Transportation isn't a challenge. So these students are finding a way to alleviate the transportation challenge and are still retaining at a really high rate. I think that's impressive. I think you see it carry on. Look at the 3-year graduation rate, 6 percentage points above the state average. Huge. Not only is that, do I like to see the high number because it just means that the students are excelling, but that means there's more qualified people in your community to fill the jobs that are available, and we all know those are there. So this is all really, really good. I've had 3 presentations today. All 3 have been positive. So I really like to talk about positive data in this way. So if you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself, ask those, and I'm here to answer any of the questions that you got. We'll move on, just kind of zoom out just a little bit, talk about Tennessee Achieves students as a whole. You've heard me say fall to fall retention, first year retention. This data point to us is incredibly important because what we know is that if a student retains after that first year, their chances of graduating significantly increase. So if we can just keep them, we'll see them finish at some point on down the road. So when we measure ourselves versus the state, our students are retaining 14 percentage points higher, and they're at any college are at 74%, which is huge. That includes students that are at 4-year universities too. And then at the bottom, you'll see our 6-year graduation rate. Our students are outpacing their peers by 16 percentage points. What this says to me when I see this number for our students is that supports matter, and that all of the programming that we're trying to innovate in, it's making a dent, and that the students benefiting from these programs are outpacing the peers that aren't receiving those benefits. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see some of those programs that I talked about earlier. Our students that are participating in summer programs are 34% more likely to retain. Students that are being coached and complete, 23% more likely to retain. I think that's especially important because those are students that are from low-income backgrounds. Those are the students who the data says that they should be performing lower than their peers. They're actually outperforming their peers. So that really means a lot. And then Knox Promise students are 42% more likely to retain. Knox Promise, we haven't talked about that, but it's just like Complete, but it's kind of like, I've used this term already, but it's like Complete on steroids too. So it's like taking Complete and you pair it with what we call completion grants, but essentially that's emergency funding. So we have cash, and if a student has a barrier or a hurdle that's affecting their ability to succeed in college. So if it's their car has a flat tire, and because of that flat tire, they can't get to campus, we can pay to put a tire on that car for the student. If they can't afford their textbooks, we can buy those. If they have food insecurity at home and they can't afford their groceries, we can give them a Kroger gift card to go buy groceries, gas to get to campus, those types of things. The good news, and I'm so glad we timed this week of presentations when we did, because we actually rolled out our statewide completion grants yesterday. So we sent the email to every student in the state, and we're able to now offer the completion grants to every student in the state, not just in Knox County where it's been for the last couple of years. So really, really cool. We've already got some requests rolling in from students across the state. So now, should students run into that type of problem, we have the option to help alleviate that financial burden should it be prohibiting them from succeeding in college. Really, really good. Huge thanks to the General Assembly for helping us get that along. So really good news. I'm going to follow it up with some kind of bad news. When it comes to the pandemic, one of the things that it really affected in terms of college in Tennessee is our college going rate. We saw a number that we were super proud of growing back with the class of 2015 by 4.6%. Took a huge dive with the class of 2020, and less students entered the pipeline than before. I think what we can assume is that a lot of these students that aren't going into the pipeline from the class of 2020 are probably the students who need to be in the pipeline the most in terms of economic stability. So when we see this, I think what it says to us is that it's time to shift into another gear, hit another gear with our programming, with our mentor program, with community involvement, because I think it's an all hands on deck situation. As you look at Hawkins County, there was a little over 8 percentage point decrease in the college going rate in Hawkins County. And that to me says, let's find some more mentors. Let's talk about going to college and let's reignite that was going there before this. I think we can bounce back quickly. It's just going to take everybody pulling on the rope in the same direction. So let's talk about what it means to engage. To engage with Tennessee Achieves. And again, not only is this going to advance the work that we're doing, but I think in general, having volunteer mentors in the community, by serving as a mentor, you're somebody that's advocating for post-secondary education, not just community college, not just the student that a lot of students, will say that they're not interested in going to community college. That's fine. Let's talk about going to a TCAT, because right now there's so many jobs out there that need to be filled, and these students that are going to TCAT and earning these technical certificates are filling those jobs. And I think students need to hear that. I think there's no better way to have those conversations than serving as a Tennessee Achieves mentor. You're paired with students during their senior year as they're making that transition. You can begin to have those conversations with the students then. It takes less than an hour a month. I think 12 hours a year is maybe even over exaggerating. For those of you that have served as a mentor, probably find it to be pretty low time commitment, but know that it can really be a huge impact should the student need the help as they make their way through this process. If you mentored with us back in 2019, you probably saw the old model of Tennessee Achieves, and we were able to meet in person. I remember running the meeting. Matthew Hunter, he's not on here, but I've run many a meeting with Matthew Hunter at Cherokee High School, talking to students and mentors, all jammed in the cafeteria. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, we had to shift our entire program virtual. So in 2021, we had a completely virtual mentoring experience. For some people, they found it to be wildly successful. They loved it, the flexibility of it. For others who had mentored, especially those who had mentored before previously, found that it was a little more challenging. So they wanted that in-person interaction back. So this year, as we move into 2022, we're going to have both. We're going to do a blend of both mentoring concepts. We're going to maintain our virtual mentoring platform that we launched last year, Tennessee Achieves Connect. So you'll have that as an option in 2022. But we're also going to provide opportunities to meet with students in person. We're going to call them Tennessee Achieves open houses. So in Hawkins County, we'll likely either use the TCAP facility up in Surgoinsville or one of the high schools, and have an opportunity for mentors and students to visit a school and have that in-person interaction. We'll basically secure the space. The mentor will invite their students to meet them there. Or mentors can meet with their students independently in a public place. As long as it's in a public place, I think that's fine. But we're going to encourage that in-person meeting. And in the cases where the mentor wants that, I think it's okay. Just doing it in a safe type of way. But we're definitely encouraged and excited for 2022 to try to roll out this hybrid model. We've tried both. I think both have found there's pros and cons to both. I think we can try to leverage the best of both worlds in 2022 and find a mentor experience that really, I think, delivers for a multitude of different kinds of mentors and people in the community that want to engage with us. Let's talk about what it means to be a mentor and how to get involved. We need 77 volunteers in Hawkins County. I would argue Hawkins County has closed the gap and met their goal first in the state. I think in my 7 years at Tennessee Achieves, nearly every year, Hawkins County has closed the goal first. They became like, I think, like a mascot in a way that we knew Hawkins County would be the first one to get it done. So I have full hope that will occur again this year. I always have the privilege of going up and speaking and visiting with teachers at the all teachers meeting. I was there this year, just right before school started. So always good to go up there and visit and continue to spread the word about the work that we're doing in the community. Mentors can apply at tnAchieves.org/mentors. Deadline to apply is December 3rd. Obviously, we have some time to get there, but I like to plant the seed now. So if you're out there and you're somebody that's looking for a way to get involved in the community and they aren't sure that they have a lot of time, I think this is the perfect way to get involved, get your feet wet in terms of volunteering. It's a great way to get started on that. So let's talk about ways to get involved. We talked about this decline in the college going rate. I think there's tons of opportunities in a variety of organizations to get involved with. The ways that we have to get involved with Tennessee Achieves are easy. They're really practical. The first one of those, obviously, is to become a mentor. I think there's no better way to do this. Being a mentor with us, you're a stakeholder as much as I am as an employee of the organization. You're as important to the work as anybody else that's involved in administering this scholarship. So we would love to have you. If you've mentored before, love to have you back. If you've never mentored before, we want you to apply as soon as you want to, as soon as you can. But other ways to get involved outside of that, number one is you can connect us with your community. And this means essentially, if you're a part of a community group, if you're a member of a Rotary Club, if you're a member of a church group that does community work, if you're a member of, if you work for a larger employer in the county, and you have an opportunity for a speaker to come provide a program, if it's 5 minutes, if it's an hour. Our team is ready to come and visit with you and provide information about the work that we do to your organization. Like I said, whether that's a church, whether that's a community group, whether that's your employer, whatever it looks like, just reach out to us. You can email mentors@tnAchieves.org, or you can email me, Ben@tnAchieves.org, and we will get you on our calendar, and we will be glad to come visit and tell about our work. And the last thing that I think you can do, and this one is the easiest one, to really spread the word about our work, is to just tell someone about Tennessee Promise. And the reason I put this on here is because I've been involved with Tennessee Achieves since 2009. I was a student in the program, then I was a volunteer with the program, and then I was an employee of the program. And my brother did not apply for Tennessee Achieves. I tried. I laid the application on the kitchen table because there was a paper application in those days, and he didn't do it. He knew about it, but he still didn't do it. And he regrets it to this day because he had to pay for his college. And so the reason I say that is because you might have a student out there that you think for sure is equipped and is prepared and is ready, and they just may not have done the application for the Tennessee Promise. And I would hate for a student to miss out on an opportunity just because they forgot. So if you know a senior, you know a parent of a senior, just remind them to get that application in. The deadline is November 1st. It opened on August 1st. So we're a couple of weeks into the application period. We're not close to the deadline yet. But it's one of those things where I think most people would agree with me is that once football season starts, once the fall starts, it's Christmas. Like you'll wake up and it'll be Christmas. And all of these things have gone by. And then now the Tennessee Promise deadline passed. And we don't want that to happen. So if you know somebody in the community, just remind them, get that Tennessee Promise application in. It takes 5 minutes, tnpromise.gov. And then we can get the ball rolling from there in terms of what Tennessee Achieves has to offer. So that's all that I have as far as a program. I am here. I'm going to answer any questions that you guys have. The floor is open. Fire away, unmute yourself, turn your camera on, whatever's easiest for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Hey, Ben, Thomas Floyd here with Hawkins County Schools. One, thank you for coming on and giving us an update. A couple of things. One, the recording. Can you send a link to this out and get that back out to us?
Yes, sir.
Our director's in a debriefing right now. Would like to kind of see an overview.
Sure.
And we'd like to share that out maybe with some community resources as well, if that would be okay.
Of course. Yeah. So our plan right now is, so we have 90 of these this week, really in like 3 days, we're doing 90 of them.
Wow.
So yeah, we have like 6 going at any time, but as we get them all done this week, we're saving all these recordings. We'll have to edit them, trim them up just a little bit. And then we'll have them all available for consumption sometime next week, early next week. And we'll send out a link to all the mentors and all the stakeholders so that you have access to these. There's a lot of people that weren't able to hop on at the time that we hosted, so we definitely want you to have access to it. We'll also include the PowerPoint too, so if you ever just wanted to use those slides.
That'd be great. Thank you. And forgive
Yes,
me,
sir.
I got to jump off too and head to that same debrief.
No problem. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Ben.
Hey, Ben, this is Dr. Blaine Jones up in Rogersville. Appreciate all you all do. All the email reminders, you know, it's time to do this and things like that. This was my first year as a mentor. I enjoyed what I got to do. I interacted with a couple of the guys I actually knew from my sons, had played ball with them out at Cherokee. So those guys were at the house and it worked out perfectly to be able to mentor for them, but they knew what they were going to do. So it wasn't very hard at all. I had one other kid. I sent multiple texts, multiple emails hey, can we do a virtual meeting? And I had one other kid reach out and ask about how he turned his community service points in. And I guided him through that and got that taken care of. But that was about the only other interaction that I had. And that's not a problem. You know, I read all the stuff, and I'm a big boy, and I know that you're going to feel like your feelings may get hurt. But as you move through, you feel like you've helped the ones that need help, and the ones that don't want, they're not going to reach out to you. But I also do a community program that many of our Cherokee students utilize to get their community hours. So I need to get that information to you, so you can put it on your website. But we do a thing called People Loving People Thanksgiving Dinner. And it's pretty much a week-long program where we prepare Thanksgiving meals and deliver them out. And the students come and work to prepare desserts or help pack meals or whatever, and earn hours doing that,
Right.
delivering meals. So it's a great opportunity for Hawkins County kids to come and work and get community service points for that. So,
Sure.
excuse me, but I'll get that, email that information to you. And I appreciate, again, I do appreciate it. And you hit the nail on the head when you said something there about the counselors at Cherokee. One of my kids that was I was a mentor for, his mother is a counselor at Cherokee. So he knew more about it than I did about what he needed to be doing. But anyway, it was a great opportunity, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, thank you so much. Thanks for the kind words. Definitely shoot me an email with that information about People Loving People. We'll get that on our website for sure. All right. Well, if anybody else has any other questions, comments, concerns, certainly welcome to take those.
I was just going to say that's another problem I had. Like, I mean, I work for a university, and it's always good for me to see, for first generation students coming in, especially from a rural area, because that's the same boat that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
But I had 10 students and I only had 3 that I actually had communication with.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard. Like, I felt bad for them, like that I wasn't doing everything that I needed to do, per se. And then, like, especially a few of them didn't get their webinar completed, or like they didn't get their community service hours turned in, so they lost the scholarship at that point. But is there anything else, like, for next year that might be helpful for that? Like,
it's an interesting question. We get asked this question a lot. I'll say this, there's a reason why we give you so many. Number one, that's why, because there is an attrition. And the attrition occurs for a multitude of reasons, some of which we don't know, some of which we do know. Obviously, there are students out there, like Dr. Jones was talking about, one of his students, his mom was a school counselor. I think in a lot of cases, that student who has a parent that prepared probably doesn't engage with a mentor all that often. Just because they see it as an additional resource and they just don't tap into that. There's some students that are just not very communicative and just don't do a great job of communicating. I think that's part of it sometimes. So again, there's multiple reasons why that happens. That's the reason why we give you so many. 3 of 10 is maybe on the lower end of what we would normally see. I think typically when you have 10, you have 5 that you work with. About half is what you end up with. So if you have 5, you get 2 that engage typically. But this year was weird. So if you had
and that's why I was wondering if the virtual was part of that, because this is my first year doing this, but the virtual platform seemed like it was harder to communicate. And like, you gave us the emails and stuff to try to reach out, but it's like they didn't really communicate with the email either. And some of the emails is emails that they didn't really like. It was a strange email that you knew that they wouldn't really check.
Yeah, that's not uncommon either. And last year was weird because we had some cases where a mentor would have a group of students that all understood complete or connect completely, and they just had this grand old time on complete together or connect together. And then you had other cases like you who had a group of students that just didn't engage with it all that much, and then it made it kind of challenging to get a hold of them. So we're looking through or thinking through ways to get more students on the platform earlier so that they're more prepared to work with their mentor virtually next year. But I would also just argue that the simple circumstance that a lot of the students were in when we paired them with a mentor last year, it was just weird, right? March 2021, no one really knew what was going on. Everyone was in the middle of a really weird school year, and they were like just ready for it to be over. And so I think in some cases it was just like I think some mentors just had a hard time getting a hold of students because students were just burned out on virtual work in general. So this is just one more thing.
I could easily see that, especially with our freshmen and all at ETSU. I know.
Yeah, I may just
very
be
burned out on
missing
email
the
and
mark.
everything.
I may not even know what I'm talking about, but it feels that way. And some of the students I've talked to, it felt that way a little bit. So I hope in 2022, students are more, I think, seasoned in terms of how they operate virtually, but also they'll be back at school. So there'll be, I think, just the spirit will be better. And then we're also going to have that option for you to meet virtually. I think or meet in person. And I think that'll help some too.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. It's a question we get often. It's hard. It's a hard one, but just keep up the good work. I think if you engage with 3, that's 3 students that didn't have a mentor before. So.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been a couple of really good relationships built that they flat out said they didn't have family to support them, and it's like that's what we're here for, to help you work through the system. Yeah,
that's right. If you get that student every 5 years, to me, it's a win.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you for mentoring.
Melissa, you're not alone. I don't think anybody checks emails under the age of 20 anymore. So I'm there. I'm with you.
Okay.
But
There's
I did use the communication of the tnAchieves communication. I forgot the name of it all of a sudden, but where we can meet and actually blog back and forth with the student on issues. What's the name of it?
Connect.
Yeah, Connect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did use that and found to reach them better. I guess if they get a notification in their email from tnAchieves about something I've said on Connect, they're more likely to respond to it than they are email just from Blake. So it worked better for me that way.
Yeah, we try to get everybody to set those reminders up. When they set Connect up, I mean, if they do it correctly, they'll get a notification to their phone, a text message that says Blake has reached out to you.
They respond to that for some reason, but they don't respond to me. So
oh yeah. One of those things. We're trying to get I told a mentor a few minutes ago from Loudoun County. I was like, well, we also didn't really know anything about Connect when we launched. I mean, we knew about it, but we were learning as we went last year in terms of Connect. So I think we as a team are more prepared to teach people about using it as well. So overall, I think it'll be an improved experience. I think it went well for the first year last year, but I think we'll make it a lot better this year too.
thank you, Ben, for this time together.
Of course, Blake, thank you for hopping on. If anybody else has anything else, I'm happy to answer questions, provide some feedback, but otherwise you feel free to hop off. It's all that we've got. Thank you all so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.